And what we are basically going to be examining today is, introducing this concept of perspective. Now, for the past 2.5 years, I have done perspective digitally because, in fact, longer than that, 3 years now, because there was a really great program called Sketchbook, not SketchUp, but Sketchbook. And it was free, and it had this lovely, lovely perspective tool where like all you had to do was drag a line to anywhere towards the center, and it like locked it into the vanishing point. And it was just like a really great tool to help students learn. Unfortunately, 2 quarters ago, they stopped giving it away for free, and now there's a fee for that. So last quarter, I did perspective with Photoshop, and I think that's really when I lost a lot of my class. So until I can get back on campus where I have a class set of iPads for everybody, we're gonna, stick with this being pencil and paper, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So the first thing to recognize when doing perspective is that like it's often really helpful to work within a boundary box. And so what I want you to do now is go ahead and like, let's just draw a boundary box. Let me see if I can. This is a little bit of a not perfect system for the setup I have here. I'm just making a rectangle. And again, I want you right now to just draw freehand. Okay, I want us to practice freehand. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that like I'm not holding my pencil here. I'm actually holding my pencil here. This actually allows me to create much longer lines without having to like pick up, pick up, pick up. The more I'm doing like pick up, pick up, pick up, the higher the chances are that it's going to be, even less of a straight line than if I hold it here. And when I hold it here, I'm actually able to activate the line through like the entire movement of my arm, rather than through this very limited movement that I have. There's a pretty cool like Instagram reel, TikTok, or whatever you may see it out of a young woman, and she walks up to her chalkboard and she puts a piece of chalk on the board, and then she draws a perfect circle. Well, the way she does that is by extending her arm out and locking her arm and keeping the arm locked at this perfect perfect distance, and thereby is able to maintain a distance which gives them the ability to draw like a perfect circle. And so the more you actually employ your whole arm, the easier it is to create like straight lines. So I'm gonna do a lot of drawing here and not a lot of drawing here. Okay. So what we're gonna do first, so we're gonna work first with 1-point perspective. Are y'all getting that video lag as well as me, or is it just me?
A little bit.
Okay. I think it's when I make really big movements, so I'll try to keep my movements small. But if it gets bad enough where just like I have a totally different backup plan for doing this. So we have 1-point perspective is what we're going to start with today. Okay, and then you read in your reading a little bit about perspective. Okay, and then if you got a chance to do the perspective quiz, then you also saw all of that contextualization that I provided for you about like the history of optics and the ideas of perspective, not really coming out of the Italian Renaissance, but rather coming out of the learning and reading of the Italian Renaissance, and the adding to information that had already been established going back to ancient Greece, going back to ancient China, and really kind of like figuring out, during the Italian Renaissance, right? Like when we get 1-point linear perspective, we get a mathematical idea of perspective. But, perspective itself is built on millennia of understanding of optics and sight and space and thinking about depiction of space, and all of that information is covered for you in the website that I created. I'm going to try this and see if it's any better rather than the video. So I've drawn a rectangle. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go corner to corner here. And I'm going to draw an X. This is a technique that we use a lot in perspective. It's basically the way in which we can find the center of the space. Now, once we've gone corner to corner, that can help us to establish the vertical axis as well as the horizontal axis. Now, being born in Britain, to me, this always reminds me of the British flag, or the Union Jack, right? Like as it's called. And so the Union Jack is made up of the cross in the center, which is the cross of St. George, and then these diagonal lines, which are the symbols for Scotland. So it's the British Isles and Scotland. That's what makes up the Union Jack. But we use this sort of like division of space a lot in perspective. Simon, what is tough to see? Like, what do you mean? Low contrast between pencil and paper. Okay. Well, let me increase. I can go up in darkness. Now, this might make things a little bit messy. But we're increase the density of my pencil, the softness, and see if that helps. Also, I want to recognize with you here too, that in all of this foundational drawing like this, I don't want it to be too dark, because the lighter the drawing, the easier it is. I don't have to erase. But I also understand that I need to teach. So hopefully, is that a bit better if I do that, Simon? Yes, no. Anybody else have input for me? Is that easier to see?
Yeah, that's easier to see.
Okay. Now on your end, I actually want you to draw nice and light. And I also want you to practice keeping your hand off the page, because that will really help you to not smudge the drawing and make a mess. Okay. Now, now that I found the center of the area, good, I'm glad, okay. We now have in the center here, right, which I didn't quite get 100%, want to just kind of like move that over. In the center there, we have our vanishing point. Okay, so the vanishing point is the line that all of the diminishing lines are going to go to. So we have our VP, which is our vanishing point. Okay. Now we have our diminishing lines, which are called orthogonals. Okay, so those are going to be diminishing lines. So in a 1-point perspective, those are going to be all the angles, all the diagonal lines. Now, the main rule to remember in terms of the lines here are that in 1-point perspective, vertical lines always equal vertical. Horizontal lines always equal horizontal. Okay. And then orthogonal lines are always orthogonal. Now that changes when we go into 2-point. In 2-point, vertical lines equal vertical, horizontal lines equal orthogonal, and that's it. And then once we go into 3-point, all lines are orthogonal. So it's really important in 1-point perspective to try to maintain the verticality and the horizontality of your vertical and horizontal lines. Otherwise, they become orthogonals. And once they become orthogonals, then you're going to lose the perspective. Okay, now in terms of the perspective, then we also have the SP, and all of this information is in the reading, and all of it should sound familiar. The SP is a standing point, and that is the position that you're standing at with which you are viewing the space. Okay, so let's start off by just placing our SP right here. Okay, now this point is our vanishing point. Okay, and all vertical lines are going to stay vertical, all horizontal lines are going to remain horizontal, and all lines that are diminishing are going to become orthogonals. So depending on where you went to school, you may have already done perspective. When I taught in Florida, it was middle school curriculum. When I taught in Pennsylvania, it was just at the sort of like, I guess, 5th grade, right? Like right at the cusp between 5th and 6th grade. So depending on the state you're in, perspective should be taught at different points. And so hopefully you've all seen 1-point perspective in some capacity. So what we're going to do first is just really basic, very simple perspective. Now, I find a lot of times with perspective, it's the easier perspective that students really struggle with. In the past, I've used, and I may use this quarter, a perspective packet of handouts that is really geared towards sort of middle school students. And a lot of my students sort of roll their eyes at it and you know, kind of feel that it's beneath them, and then, you know, get page after page wrong. And I always think that's the truth for anything, right? Like the more simple something is, the harder it actually can be. So there's a difference between like thinking you know a principle and actually knowing the principle. So we're just going to start off really simple here. Go ahead over here towards the left side. Let's gesture in. So gesture being a quick little drawing, loose, a little square, okay? Now what we want to do is from all 4 corners of our square, we're going to draw to the vanishing point. Now I know it's in a little bit we'll use rulers, but right now I want you to practice freehanding. Okay, so there we go. I can see there's still a lag on that. Now here, we're going to come down the edge of this a little bit of a ways, and then just draw a vertical line there. How far? I don't know, you decide. And let's draw a horizontal line over there to that orthogonal. Draw a vertical line to that orthogonal. Draw a horizontal line to that orthogonal. And we've made ourselves a wee little rectangle. Okay. Now we know that it's a rectangle because the sides are longer than the front plane. So remember we talked about plane. So here, the side planes are longer than the front plane. Okay. Now, remember that with perspective, we're talking about diminishing space. So that means that the sides here are actually longer than they appear because they're actually diminishing in space. So if we go over here to this side, we draw another square. Okay. Then connect the corners to the vanishing point. Again, I'm freehanding because I want to practice that freehanding. Now, sometimes you're going to get these situations where this orthogonal transects that corner and so lines up with this orthogonal, and that's okay if that's really what's happening. Now I want to make this a square, not a rectangle. So in order to make it a square, because space is diminishing, the sides need to be slightly smaller than this side. Okay. And so I'm going to practice with you our visual skills. And we just want to visually make sure that this length is quite enough smaller that, because we're not finding the exact distance here, we're going to kind of like exaggerate the fact that it's a little bit smaller to make sure that it's definitely smaller than that front piece there. And then just connect the squares in the back. Now, are there systems of measurements that you can employ to make sure that the diminishing rate of your perspective is exactly mathematical? Yes. Yes, there are. And we'll talk about them. Now, both of these forms are below the horizon line. So that means we're going to see the top of the forms. So let's do one up above the horizon line. So draw a square above the horizon line. And then connect down with your orthogonals to the vanishing point. And let's just make it a rectangle, so let's make it longer than the front plane. Now, I forgot to add this one, so I'm going to add that one. And then just that goes to there, and that goes to there. not difficult. Okay. Questions so far?
Not from me.
Okay. Everyone else good? Okay. Simon, you good? I will take the silence as a yes. Okay. So now, of course, because we are now above the horizon line, we see the bottom plane. Do you see? So here we're below the horizon line, so we see the top plane. Here we're above the horizon line, so we see the bottom plane. Okay. So let's do one more. Let's do one over here. And I want half of your front plane to go through the horizon line. Like I want this to go right through it to divide it in half. Then corner, 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 corner. Then vertical here. Vertical, I mean, sorry, horizontal, horizontal, vertical. And so now you can see, because we're half above and half below the horizon line, that we are actually, we're not going to see, if this was an opaque form, we wouldn't see either the top or the bottom of the form. So then the one that sort of stumps a lot of us is just what happens then if this is right over the vanishing point X and Y axis. Well, if this is an opaque form, we wouldn't see anything at all. If we drew orthogonals from each corner, we would probably see something like that. Now, this may be making your eyes go a bit funny, because if you were viewing it from the top, then that might be the top of a pyramid and you were looking down the sides of the pyramid, which would, sort of be the orthogonals that you'd be seeing. Now, I recognize with some of you that this might be very much just review of things you already know. For others of you, this is brand new stuff and you've never seen it before. Oh, Simon, we're not there yet. Okay, we're definitely going to deal with round shapes, but not yet. First things first, to deal with round shapes, we need to kind of get a continued grasp of 1-point perspective. And I usually do ellipses and cylinders after I do 2-point perspective. So a little bit down the road. It's a great question though. How do you do them? Okay, so I'm just going to turn my page here. You can just move to another part of your page, or you could move to a different page. It's up to you. Totally. I'm glad that I mean, it's a great question. It's a great question. Okay, so go ahead, like before, let's go ahead and create our boundary box. Okay, now a big misconception about 1-point perspective is that it has to go to the center of the page. That it's not true. It doesn't have to go to the center of the page. Generally, we start off with it going to the center of the page because, quite frankly, it just makes a lot more sense when you're learning the principles. So we are going to do one more right now where we go to the center of the page. So I'm just going to go ahead and divide my space. And again, I'm freehanding here on purpose. I'm practicing freehanding with you. I want us to practice that and to, increase our ability to draw, through muscle memory, like developing our muscle memory. So let's practice making a little bit more of a complex form. Okay. So what I would like to do is I think I want to start over here. Let's start over here. Don't go above the horizon line. And let's make a tool rectangle. Now we're close to the horizon line, but we're not above the horizon line. Then what we're going to do is go ahead and draw down to the vanishing point. Okay, draw down to the vanishing point. You can make your vanishing point darker if you like. Now over here, this side's not going to be very wide, but it's going to be visible. Pull down to the vanishing point. Like that. And then this corner here, let's go ahead and draw down to the vanishing point. Now, I'm not sure exactly how long, but something like about that. Let's go ahead and draw a second rectangle back here that touches all of the orthogonals we just made. I can see right there that I've got a wee little bit of a problem with that back orthogonal because that line should not be going up so much. So I just need to correct that line. Take your time, Vaughn. Take your time. There we go. It's just a sliver of a top, and that makes that actually work then. Sorry about that. Mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. Okay, now this front rectangle, go ahead and divide corner to corner there and corner to corner here. Try to get those lines as straight as you can. And then where they intersect, go ahead and do a horizontal line, and it's going to create a point right there. And from that point, draw down to the vanishing point. It should interact here. Now you know that this is a 1-point perspective because you have a plane that is facing you. If it was a 2-point perspective, you would have a corner. It would look like this. Okay, and so whenever you have a corner, you basically always, not even basically, you always have a 2-point perspective. So we know that it's a 1-point perspective because we have a plane that is facing you. Right? So we could do, if we want to, we could say, well, that is going to go back there and this will go back there. You don't have to because it could muddy things up for you, but you know, if you want to, you can do that. Now, what I want to do with you is take this distance here. Okay. And then let's take that distance and just through feeling, I just want you to feel the distance. I want you to double it. So we're practicing our feeling, like our muscle memory feeling, our ability to feel dimensional space through distance traveled by the pencil across the paper. And in this case, that's being linked to the visual distance that we are seeing. Okay, now same thing here, just feel that line over. It's okay if it goes a little bit beyond the other line because we've got this as a marker and we're just going to draw straight up. Often when you're trying to draw a straight line, it's helpful to actually draw past where you think it needs to go. And it'll actually help you get a bit of a smoother, more accurate straight line. So then from this corner here, we're going to go down to the vanishing point. From this corner here, we're going to go down to the vanishing point. And then just travel this line here all the way over. Bring it down. So we have a shape now that looks like this. Kind of a stairs, you see. Could be anything, could be a piano. Divide this in half here. Corner to corner. Horizontal line creates your point. Down to the orthogonal, sorry, the orthogonal down to the vanishing point. Now, what I want to do now is I have this. I actually want to divide this space here corner to corner. When I do all this stuff, y'all, I'm literally just making it up. Because I think what's, fun about drawing is like once you know a principle, you can like take it anywhere. And like as an instructor, I think that it's exciting to kind of see a process and a technique being employed in such a way that like your instructor doesn't quite know what the outcome is going to be. But yet you have faith that your instructor will get there. The faith part's important, but I will get there. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to draw our vertical line here. It just so happens that it would match up with that back edge, and that's great. Vertical line remains vertical. Horizontal line remains horizontal. Now take your eraser and let's erase all of this. erase all of that. And if you accidentally erase something you need, you can just redraw it. So now what we've done is we've erased all that stuff, but this kind of like L shape here. We want to keep this line here. And then it comes here to this square here. So let's go ahead and just, we want to draw a horizontal line here. And then just pull down a vertical line right there. Now, if you want to, you can also erase this in here. This is going to come down and come in contact there. And then we just need an orthogonal. Here. You could erase that actually if you want to. I'm going to erase this. I'm actually going to erase that. How cool is that? There we go. Complex shape. Got this weird L-shaped thing. Now let's just draw a horizontal line all the way over this side. All the way over this side. Just let it go outside your boundary box if you want. This is the center of the space. This is our corner orthogonal here. Let's divide this space in half. And then take from this point here, take a line to the vanishing point and pull it through. My pencil just broke again. Now, one of the things about drawing, like learning to draw, is like playfulness, you know? And I'm literally playing right now. Like I have a goal. I know what we're doing. But like playfulness is such an important part of learning, you know, in the West, our educational system, like it focuses on like this idea that learning can't be playful. But like when you're a little kid, all the learning you're doing is playful, you know? And so like, what happens if your learning process, you know, becomes just like sort of like this like repetitive sort of like callback mechanical sort of system of learning. Like it has a certain value, but not unless you never are also actually just spending time playing around and like, you know, making a mess by yourself and like, you know, making failures and, you know, losing sight of a goal and discovering a new goal. Like all that stuff is just so important and powerful to the process of learning art, as well as other things. Okay, so go ahead. Let's go ahead and divide that way too. Just take that off the page. Now I want to do is I want to take this quadrant back here. Like that. And I want you to draw vertical lines up from the corners. And I want you to take them above the horizon line. These ones can go quite high. And I'm just going to draw a horizontal there. And I'll just draw a horizontal here. And then let's see what happens. Yeah, I thought maybe that would happen. You don't need to do this one yet. Like, let's just pull that orthogonal up to touch this corner. Just pull that orthogonal up. And that will actually give you the way that you can pull this straight up until it makes contact with that. And then you can pull over your horizon, your horizontal line. And then let's try the same thing over here. And a wee bit of an issue there where like this line wasn't going to connect with this line. Then I looked and said, oh, that's because it's bendy wendy. It needs to be more vertical. Yeah, now we built a very tall rectangle kind of across the street from our weird little bench that we made. Okay. And actually like say, okay, so don't forget, like here's your horizon line. Let's go ahead and let's divide the space corner to corner inside here, inside of our rectangle, corner to corner. Okay, and then here is where it intersects horizontally. Okay, Zach, bye. All right, and now here we go, corner to corner again, here and here, and then horizontal. Now, if there's just like way too many lines in there, we're gonna, this form's gonna be opaque. So we could kind of erase some of these lines if you like. If you need to have some more, just don't erase that line, you need that line. But you could erase all that if you want. To clarify things, then you can go, okay, corner to corner again, please. And then I thought, you know, like, because I don't usually draw in small pads like this. I set up this way and look, my ergonomics aren't quite right, and it's actually quite hard for me to get a straight line. So let that be a lesson to us all about ergonomics. What I'm trying to avoid doing is doing this all digitally, which is like my backup, because y'all are doing it on paper and pencil, and I find it a little difficult to translate. Now, where they intersect, again, horizontal line. Okay, so now we just created like this little space in here. Okay. So Go ahead and divide, like erase those corner to corner lines. Now, I quite like those division lines building up. It becomes part of the pedamente, the underdrawing. And I really like pedamente, but it can get a bit confusing when you're trying to learn something brand new like this. So I'm just gonna erase them. You can too if you want. Now I have this new little rectangle here. And what I want to do is actually, I want to now divide that corner to corner. And then that's going to give me a horizontal and a vertical. Okay. And then what I want to do is I want to divide this now corner to corner, divide this corner to corner, divide this corner to corner, divide this corner and corner. And you can see that we already had that other X. So now I don't need to draw them again. So now I've got 4 squares with X's in it, you see. Now I'm going to draw a vertical line there between those centers. A horizontal line here and here between those centers and a vertical line there. Okay. Then I can erase these lines. And I can erase what's inside here. And now I've got like a little window starting here. And then what I want to do is draw from this point here down to the vanishing point, like that. Now I can see how this line is going in terms of its trajectory. I can see that, like, say there was another little window back here. Right? I can see that the intersections of things would be inside these rules. And so like, I don't need to draw in any intersections inside there. I just need this line in here. So now I've drawn inside the window. And then even though we're not really supposed to be doing much shading right now, we can just shade this, start dark, and then let it get lighter. Okay, start dark and let it get lighter. See how I changed my direction there? Vertical, vertical, vertical along this plane. Horizontal, horizontal, horizontal. That's that. This helps us to see what we just did. Now, if this wool was much thinner, then we actually might see the end of this window kind of thing happening inside there, but I don't think we would. Now inside here, go ahead and strengthen this square in space. And then just from this corner, just draw a straight line down. Don't bend it. If you bend it, we're going to go into 3-point perspective, and I don't want you to do that. As straight as you can possibly make it. And then at some point, not too low, go ahead and divide it like that. And then where they intersect, draw that orthogonal to the vanishing point. I don't know what that is. It's a booby trap in the road. It could just be a classic Seattle road with a hole in it. So just some fun sort of like complicated forms. Okay, any questions yet?
I don't have any.
Okay. All right. Grab a new section here to draw with. I'm going to turn my page vertical. Okay. Last quick little thing, and then we're going to change a little bit, and we're going to get out our rulers. Okay. Let's go ahead and create our space. Okay, and then let's go ahead and find the center. Sorry, I'm gonna have to turn it this way, but then I'm gonna turn it back vertically. It's okay to do something like that if you have to. Sorry, the lighting is changing in my kitchen very quickly here. Starting to cast shadows. Okay. Go ahead and divide the space down here, corner to corner. Find the horizontal. We don't need to worry about finding the vertical right now because we already found the vertical with that first vertical axis. Let's divide the space here, corner to corner. Again, we've already got the vertical axis. And divide that again, corner to corner. I really, really like all those lines. They make me so happy. Okay, so now we have a horizontal line here, a horizontal line there. So we just divided the bottom half of our rectangle into quadrants. Okay, now where there's like a little bit of a bump in size, that's me doing the freehanding. And so that's where the ruler comes in handy. But again, right now we're just practicing our freehanding. Okay. So I can look at that and say, well, Professor Vaughn, that's not quite very good. Why don't you put that where it needs to go? There you go. That was a good girl. So now it's in a better place. Okay. So we're just gonna kind of like think about what we did on that building a second ago and just do it a bit larger so we can see how it might apply to lots of different things. So we just created quadrants, right? Like horizontal quadrants. Okay. So now, if we were to like we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So now if we were to take this and go corner to corner there, we've already got that division. So let's keep that division. And corner to corner here. There that is again. Okay. So then we can do vertical axis through here, vertical axis through here. Okay. And so we've already got this division here. It's going to line up there where it intersects with that horizontal. And this division here lines up with that horizontal there. So basically, we've now created like another square inside here, another rectangle, sorry. And so we're going to work with that rectangle. And what's cool is we know that that rectangle, that the center of that rectangle is exactly halfway through the space from the vanishing point to the standing point there. Okay. So let's go ahead and take this. It's like these are going to be the outside orthogonals on the top. Now we're going to see the top plane because it's below the horizon line. Okay, so there's the front plane. Now let's take like this corner here and this corner here. And that's going to give us an X here and here. So let's divide that through there. And that will give us the outside. So now we have what's really going to effectively be a square. Again, I'm having fun. You may not be, but I am. I'm going to draw a vertical line there and a vertical line there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is basically, we already have this line here running through the center. Okay. And we already have, we have found earlier this division here. So we're going to find this division here. Now don't get it mixed up with your orthogonal for the top surface. Same thing, we found this. Okay. Now inside here, we already found that division. Okay. And so then I'm going to find this division here, and it creates a line there. And in those two spots, I'm going to draw vertical lines. So what I'm doing with you right now is just practicing like dividing the space, dividing the space, dividing the space. Now take from this point here, you're going to go down orthogonal to the vanishing point, orthogonal to the vanishing point. And then vertical, vertical. Now the top edge here lines right up with the horizon line, horizon line. So you're just going to draw straight over like that. So let's erase the lines that we don't need. So we're going to erase all of these lines in here, because that's a plane that's facing us. We're going to erase these lines here because that's a solid plane facing us. Here. Here. Solid planes facing us. Here. Solid plane facing us. Here. So we've got basically a large box with two smaller boxes balancing on the edge. Let's take this box here, divide it in half like that. I find it really easy to keep things, to clean things up so that we can create new lines and it's not super difficult for us to understand. And then that will create a vertical line there and a vertical line there. Let's divide this space here and here, here and here, and then do a vertical line here, and a vertical line here. Let's divide this in half here, and half here, half here, half here, vertical line, vertical line. So we're going to use those two vertical lines now to draw, just draw straight up. I don't know how high. A little bit beyond what you think is a square. Maybe that's a square. That's a square. Square is fine. And just draw straight over here so that you figure out where that's going to go. You want them to be the same height. Then we're going to draw from this point straight down. Straight down. Divide the space over here, corner to corner. Do your vertical line here, vertical line there, and just take it all the way up. Take it all the way up. So now we have these two forms Top of those two. Now the thing about like linear perspective, like Renaissance styles, like it doesn't really evoke much energy of life, right? Like it's very, very even, very static. You know, it, it's really not till, you know, really what occurs is the discovery of Hellenistic sculpture by the high Renaissance artists like Michelangelo, and then Raphael. And that's when they start to see like the S shape of the contrapposto and the way that energy can evoke naturalism. And that is when they start to break up the even distribution of linear perspective and bring some life into the thing. But you know, Batista, Leon Batista, and even in many ways Leonardo, right? Like it's everything is like really like straightforward. Like every line goes here, every line goes there, every person goes here, every person goes there, and it ends up being built on a grid system. And so the grid system is a great tool, but not necessarily one that evokes naturalism. But we're talking about evoking naturalism later on. So here, everything is really symmetrical, really evenly created. Now, if we wanted to, we could bring in a little bit of the Baroque in, you know, a little bit of diagonal line. So let's give that a whirl. Let's take this space here and divide that in half, and then divide it in half vertically to find the center. And then let's divide it in half again, here and here. So that now we have thirds. Okay. And let's pull the thirds up. Let's bring the outside edge of that third up to that orthogonal. This one is obviously then going to go beyond the orthogonal, and then a horizontal line to connect them. It's important to make sure this one goes above the orthogonal, otherwise you'll forget that it's supposed to be Tula, because if it was lined up with the orthogonal, then it wouldn't be Tula. It'd be, the top would be cut at a diagonal. So then here, let's divide this in half. And let's divide this in half. Okay, and then let's just take that up. And then from this point, you're going to drop down to the vanishing point, like so. So we somewhat broke up the exact center rule that we were playing with. So go ahead and erase the lines in here that you don't need to help you, you know, keep things clarified. Now let's lightly find the center of this form here. Let's find the center of this form here. Okay. So now this center here is going to line up with this out here. It's not going to line up with that center there because that center is going to be inside here because we used a different system. So we're going to go from here basically to there. Just draw a diagonal line across there. Now divide this quarter space here, corner to corner, to get the vertical line here. So we had this. It looked like this. And then we had the center. And so then I said, divide it here to here, here to here. And then that found the center again. Now I just want you to mimic the angle that you did here. Try to pay attention that the distance from this side to that side and is the same going all the way through. Okay, then just draw up. Draw up. And again, try to mimic that line. Now that's a bit tricky because it's kind of like, are we moving into 2-point? No, because we still have a plane facing us. Now, if we were to draw the inside of this form, we would see that it was still in 1 point, you see, because we would see it like that, but it's opaque. So we're not going to see inside there. So it's going to look a bit something like that. You can erase all the stuff you don't need. A little bit of a complex form there for us. Okay. Okay, let's take a break. Okay, so sometimes I find that students haven't really had any type of sort of basic ruler education. So just a quick review. We tend to use this incredibly convoluted fractional system on rulers in America. Centimeters kind of make a lot of sense, but we generally don't use them. Not sure why. Probably something to go back between like, you know, we must not take on anything that's British. So here we go. So the first inch, your ruler might look a little bit different, right? But the first inch is here. We can see that this first inch is broken down into 30 seconds, okay? So each one of these little lines means that it's a 32nd of an inch. The first line here is 0, and 1 would be 30 to 30 seconds, all right? Now on my second inch here, you can see it's broken down to 16ths, which is of course half of 30 seconds, okay? And so 16ths, each line represents a 16th, again, with the 1 inch mark, you know, in this case, 2 inches, or the whole inch mark, let's say that being 16 16ths. Okay. So really, for what we're going to be doing, we're not going to mess around with 30 seconds or 16ths. We're just going to be looking at 1/8 and 1/4 and 1/2 kind of thing, right? So these ones here are going to be also in 16ths. We can count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so they're 16ths. So every other one, therefore, will be like an 1/8. Okay, so the first one is a 16th, the second one is an 1/8, right? And then we would have 3/8, and then the next one is a 1/4. Okay, so obviously a 1/4 is 2/8. You know, if you divide it in half as a fraction. So then we would have 3/8, and then we have 1/2. So you notice that the 8ths are the same length as the 1/4s, but the 1/2 is longer than the 1/4s or the 8ths. So then we'd have, so 1/2 would be 4/8, then we'd have 5/8, then we'd have 6/8 or 3/4, and then we'd have 7/8 with 6 being 8/8. Okay. So we're primarily just going to be looking at like 1/4s and 1/2s for what we're doing. I'm just going to erase all that. So we're probably going to be looking at 1/4s, 1/2, 3/4. Okay. Right. So let's go ahead and we're going to stay with practicing freehand, but we're also going to bring in the ruler. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is just like we did with the homework that you just did. We're going to start off with a nice like study of a rectangle. Okay, that gives us our idea space, like the space that is our idea that we want to fill. Not fill, but measure around. So then if I lay my ruler here and I measure that, then I had basically 6.5 inches. I'm going to round up to make my life easier. So whatever your easiest one is to round up. Let's not do that, Vaughn. It's been forever since I taught this by hand. You've been using digital for so long. Let's make it 6 inches. Okay. So just make a mark at the 0, which is the first mark on the ruler, and then at the 6 inches. Okay. Now, whenever you like sort of do measurements on paper, the easiest thing to use to help guide you are the machine edges. Those are the edges that the machine made. So let's see how far this line was from the edge. It's 3/4 of an inch. And this one is 3/4 of an inch. And just a little bit more. So I'm just going to round that. Would it be easier, Vaughn? Probably got people who've never used rulers. All right. So let's go ahead and go in a whole, just a 1 inch from the outside. So make a mark there. Okay, 1 inch. But I'm using that first line that I did there as a guide. Make a mark there. And then here, I can use that 1 inch mark and that 1 inch mark there to help me then to draw my 6 inch line. And it's going to be 1 inches, 1 inch from the edge here and 1 inch from the edge there. So anytime you're making a straight line with a ruler on paper, like you always want to make at least 2 measurements, because if you only have 1 measurement, then your ruler can sometimes act as a pivot and you won't get a straight line. Hope that makes sense. Now down this side here, it'd be a little bit more difficult to get a 1 inch from the machine edge. So instead, I'm just going to take a 1 inch from, on my pad right now, I have these like spiral, but maybe you have a machine edge. And if you do, that's rad. But like, I can go from the clean outside edge of the hole and make a mark there. And make a mark there. Okay. Now, before I make my 6 inch line there, let me just measure that distance to see what I have. I have an 8.5. That's not too bad of a number to work with, but it might not be the easiest. Okay. So I need to lose 1/2 inch. So now I actually have a chance to do like a double measurement, which will help me actually get like a more precise measurement. So I can go back to here where I had that 1 inch here and add my 1/2 inch there. Go here where I had that 1 inch and add 1/2 inch there. So now, right, it's 1.5 inches from that hole. Now here's the second measurement. I can now measure from that mark to that line to get my 8 inch mark. So if it's slightly off because perhaps my ruler wasn't perfectly lined up, that's okay. I'm just going to do 8 inches. And up here, I'm going to do 8 inches again. And visually, I'm guiding my eye between the edge of the ruler and the edge of the page. Now, another technique trick that you can use too is when I line up here to make my measurement, it should be 6 inches, right? It was 6 inches down here, so it needs to be 6 inches up here. So that tells me this line's off a hair. It should also be 6 inches in the middle here. So now I've got all these marks to help guide me to get my line where it should be. And so now I've made a 6 inch by 8 inch rectangle. So perhaps you don't, the reason I started off with that sketch at the rectangle was because my brain always works easier from a sketch. But then I remembered that there's probably students in here who haven't used a ruler before, so I needed to use whole numbers. So sorry for that confusion. The little bit of extra step there was me just being like, oh, hold on a second there, Professor Vaughn. You've probably got students in here who've never used a ruler before, which is very common these days, especially with all our learning online, right? That's changed everything. So now I'm gonna see how square I made I'm gonna measure corner to corner. So I'm gonna make sure that that 0 mark is right up there in the very tip corner. I'll come down here, and so I have 10 and 3/8. So I have 10 plus 3 little lines. Excuse me, 10 and 3/16. And here I have just about 10 and 2/16. I just want to go back and make sure I got that right where it needed to go. There you go, 10 and 2/16. If you're slightly off, it's okay. It won't mess us up. Measuring super hard, and that's why I'm not someone who does carpentry. And people will say to me like up to a certain size, I always buy my canvases pre-made, and people are like, it's so much cheaper to make them your own and yada yada. And I just feel, yeah, I'm just dreadful at it. To say I'm just dreadful at it, not gonna make it myself. You know, once you start moving towards 6 foot, 8 foot canvases, it's cheaper to make them your own and use cheap, you know, just make them yourself and let them not be perfect. Okay, so here we go. Turn my page horizontal here. And we're gonna line this up. And just about 8 inches. Just find the center at 4 inches. Now this way, I have 6 inches. Now, this is one of those things too, like I'm having to sit down right now. So I need to actually be like, make sure that I'm above my ruler to get an accurate measurement. So I want my horizon line to be at 3 inches. And again, I'm gonna make 2 lines as that's gonna get me much more accurate measurements. So 3 inches on each side. So whenever you're trying to make straight lines, those multiple measurements across the space are always going to help you. You know, the more measurements you can make, the more straight your lines will be. Now go ahead and just divide the space. You got your corner to corner action. So nice and lightly, okay? You don't have to do it dark, just nice and light. That would be the other way that you could find the center line. You know, if you're going to do your horizon line right through the middle, that would be another way to do that. Now, anyone that's done perspective before obviously knows what's coming, which is like the road. Okay, but I'm going to cover a lot of information and hopefully some of it's new to you if you haven't done, if you've done this before, you haven't done this before, then all of it will be new to you. Those of you who have drawn before, remember that drawing is language. And so like, you know, say you took Italian class and somebody in there grew up in a household where Italian was spoken. You know, that person who grew up in that household where Italian was spoken would have more familiarization than a student who grew up in a household where, you know, only English and Spanish was spoken. And so, you know, as a language, you know, as teaching drawing is teaching a language, some of you will have some vocabulary that others do not. Still make sure you follow along and make sure you do what I asked you to do. You know, don't try to outdo me. I think the problem there is like you might miss something that I asked you to do, and then that becomes a bit bumpy. So I'm going to line up with my center mark and my center mark, and I'm just going to draw my line down the middle here. Now, the space down here is 8 inches. We're going to start off, right? We're going to do lines down the center of the road because we all must do. And we must, it's just a requirement that we always make lines down the center of the page in our drawing 1 class. So what we want to do is we want to think about the proportional relationship of the line to the road. You know, if I put the line here and here, well, that line would be gigantic, right? Like that would be a gigantic line comparative to the road. So we don't want that. So I bet if we do 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch there, they'll probably get us a pretty decent line width. So on each side of your center line there, go ahead and do 1/2 inch. Like so. Now, perception of space. Okay. To increase the perception of space, we will always do better to give the illusion that something has fallen out of the space than to try to start off everything exactly at the edge of the space. So if you took design with me, which a couple of you did, then this is basically like thinking about you know, the balance of space, the conceptual ideas of gravity and space. You know, we could even begin to start to talk about like anomaly as creating something which is more realistic rather than like a completely balanced rhythmic repetition. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually just going to come up a little bit. So this distance from here to here is 3 inches. So let's just come up 1/2 inch and make a line. And just make a nice horizontal line there. Remember that if you fail to make the line horizontal, it becomes an orthogonal. And if it becomes an orthogonal, it's going to throw off your perspective. So this now becomes like the tail end of a line falling off the page. Okay. Now, what I want to do, and even this line looks maybe just a hair too wide, but if it gets too small, then we won't be able to see it on the camera. Now, what we want to do is like, I want us to think a bit about the, like, what does the distance look like between lines in the road? You know, if they're too close together, then they don't function. You know, we're going to make a broken line. So they don't function as a broken line if they're too close together. If they're too far apart, then they also don't function as a broken line. They may function as, you know, a turn lane. which wasn't supposed to be there. So let's just go ahead, and then what I want you to do is I want you to kind of like, let's see if we can't come up with a distance that feels okay. So this line in the front is quite large because it's very close to us. Remember that perspective is about diminishing space. So let's go ahead and make a mark at the 1/2 inch mark there. And let's see, like, what would it look like if we put our next line there? Should show you this trick, which is if I line my ruler up here and I line this long inch mark through that vertical line, that will help me to create a more accurate horizontal space. Okay. Now, basically, we just created a measurable distance right there, right? I think that is a measurable distance. It's gonna diminish, like it has to have like a diminishing quantity to it. Now we could do that by saying, well, if this one is 1/2 inch, then the next one would be like 1/4 inch, then 1/8 inch, and 1/6 inch. But what if then we have more lines than we have like even diminishing numerical values? Okay. So what I want you to do is go ahead and just extend the horizontal lines that you just made all the way over to touch with the orthogonal lines you made earlier. Like this. Again, trying to make sure that they are horizontal. Okay, we're almost there in creating a system that will help us. We're really close. Okay, if the space between them is 1/2 inch, let's see what happens if we say that this first line is 1 inch long. How does that look? So it doesn't look too bad. Like that looks like it would be a believable length of a line in the center of a road of this size. So I'm just going to line that a nice even inch markup with that vertical line down the center that we made, and draw a horizontal line out to those orthogonals. Now, what I want you to do is take your ruler and find the angle from this point here to this point there. Once you have that angle, slide it up without changing it as much as you can. And when the ruler touches this point there, draw a line. So what I did, right, was I lined my ruler up and I found a line. I found the angle right here. And then keeping that angle, I slid the ruler up, keeping the angle. And when it came to the corner of this line here and that edge, I drew the line. Now, what if you accidentally change the line? Pretty big possibility that you did. So what you want to do is just do it again and check it again. Take it, slide it up without moving it, see if it's the same. Okay. Now the other way to check it is to take your pencil and making sure that you are holding your paper and your pencil in such a way that you can look through the edge of your pencil, line your pencil up with the angle, close the eye of your non-dominant hand, and then scoot it up and see if it's the same angle. You could also be really way, way, way better at math than I am. And as a result, you would probably have some type of angle measuring device thingy that you could use, like a triangle or a protractor. It's up to you. But basically, that tells us where the next line's going to go. And I'm just looking for a nice solid mark, like on the ruler. It doesn't matter to me where it is. That's a nice solid vertical mark that I can line up with that vertical line, and boop, I can put my next line there. Now, same thing. I'm going to measure from here to here. I'm going to pick that measurement. Right? It has a measurable angle. And I'm going to drag. Oh, sorry, one last thing, forgot. I have to draw this line all the way over. So I can pick that line now and drag it up. From here to here. And that's going to create my next line. Now I'm going to drag that line all the way out to the edges. And measure, pick that angle there. Sorry, I don't want to get stuck on the spiral as I'm moving my ruler. And I'm going to move that measurement without moving my ruler. I'm going to move it up. Whoop. Tells me where the next break between the lines are going to go. Whoop, whoop, whoop. This angle from here to here. Move that up. Now you can see that, like, even though the angle is the same angle, that the distance of the length of the line and the space between the lines is diminishing. Which, if like me, you're not into math, that's saving you a lot of work with fractions. Yay! We're not using fractions. Makes me happy. Okay, so here again, there's that angle there. I'm gonna pick that up. Place it there. Now I have the location of that line. And you see that as it goes and diminishes, right? Like it gets harder and harder to see. But you can see that we're still working with the same two angles. This first angle, which is the distance from the end of this line to the beginning of that line, which is this angle, which is repeated again and again. And then the angle that is the length of the line itself, which is repeated again and again. So as long as you are getting those angles correct, then it should diminish at a predictable and measurable rate. Ow, just hit the computer. So now we're going to go here, pick up that angle. I'm going to move it up to there. It's going to create a line. Now, by about here, you can start to just guess. Okay. Any questions?
No.
Okay. All right. So basically what we're looking for are like diminishing measurements, right? And again, you could do that. You could say this line is an inch, that space would be half an inch, this line would be 3/4 of an inch, that space would be 1/4 of an inch, this space would be half an inch, that space would be 1/8 of an inch, this space would be, oh, I forgot what I was at, 1/4 of an inch, that space would be 1/16 of an inch, et cetera, et cetera. I find the angles easier because I'm not much of a math girl. Okay, so now perception. Are, we could say we could definitely say without a doubt that maybe my lines are a little wide, but they're not too bad. Maybe it's a bike lane. I don't know, but they're doable. Okay. So let's think about what would the height of a sidewalk be? Would it be this high? Well, there are definitely some sidewalks down by like Pioneer Square that are that high back from when they used to have carriages. But I think for a car, it'd be kind of tall. So would a sidewalk that would be this high off the road be okay? And that looks more reasonable. Okay, so what kind of measurement is that, Vaughan? Well, that's going to be, if I do that measurement, it's just 3/8. That's a bit of an annoying measurement to work with. So instead, let's do half an inch. So go ahead and we're going to come up half an inch here on that side. And we're going to come up half an inch on that side. And then just straight down to the vanishing. Okay. Now, we don't have tons of time because we still have another technique that we need to cover today. So we're going to keep things kind of simple and straightforward. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to be a bit cheeky here. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to use this angle that we established earlier to help us make some cracks between our concrete slabs that were used on those sidewalk. So go ahead and just divide corner to corner like we were doing, to find the center of that space. Okay, so then basically we're gonna have to turn us this way because the tripod's in the way. Create these spaces. And what I'm going to do is, let me do it up here. I'm going to run that nice vertical line there through like a major measurement on the ruler to help me get a straight line. Then I get something like that. Just go down and just do that through all the spaces here. You just want to bring it up to that lower line, not the upper line too. And then things get kind of small, so you can kind of just put where you think they need to go. And then once you have that, then you can just draw straight up from there. Again, use the ruler to your advantage. Run some major measurements through your lines to help ensure that you get things into the right location vertically and horizontally. Will help a lot. And then again, as things get smaller, you can be a bit more free. Even over here, I can freehand these vertical lines. Now, we need to decide like what will be like the width of our sidewalk. So we're going to think about the height of our sidewalk. And what did we say that was? Half an inch, right? Down here at the bottom is half an inch. So if we draw up, so let's go back to this mark we made earlier. Let's do 1.5 inches to there. And on the other side, let's do 1.5 inches. Sorry, my space is tiny here. And then connect from the vanishing point to that line. That gives us a pretty good sidewalk width. Now, horizontal remains horizontal. Working with the ruler sliding between the tripod legs here. So if that's going to be the placement of our first horizontal there, a big chunk of that first horizontal is going to fall off the boundary box. Here, this is going to go orthogonal to orthogonal. Something here. There. There, all the way down till it just disappears. Done. Now, if you kind of felt like the length of those sidewalk pieces was too big, you could easily just divide them and just put horizontal line in, again, that would be fine. Actually, let's play with what I was just doing there. Let's divide the sidewalk section. To find the center by doing corner to corner. Now, we can't really find this corner inside the boundary box, but we can definitely extend it out until it meets. Now, if you're on a piece of paper and the edge of the paper is there, one of the things you can do is just take a piece of string and line the string up through here and then like line it up through here, play around till you find the location where it meets and then tape it down. And then if you pull it straight and taut, you can move it around, which is actually one of the ways that they have long used string and rope to make perspectives. In fact, Stonehenge was made that way. Okay, bye. So Stonehenge was made basically by one person standing in the center and one person standing on the outside, or multiple people or whatever. And they had a length of rope, and then they just walked with the rope tool in a circle, and it basically creates like a human compass. So now we can find the center from here, corner to corner. Okay, which tells us where the center of this is. So here's our center here. Okay. So from there, we can start to work on a building, and that's what we'll do on Monday. Right now, I want to go with you to talk about the next technique, which we're going to be exploring in your homework, on top of some other drawing activities that you're going to be doing. So don't lose this piece of paper, but today, once I open up the discussion, please post your notes to that discussion so that we can all see what you got to today. And then what we want to be doing is we're going to come back to this on Monday to work on this further. Okay. So it's really important that we cover this next part so that you can do your homework. So couple of things that you need. Just need to add one more tool to your arsenal here, which is some type of pen. It can be like a ballpoint pen, Or if you have like fancy drawing markers, it could be a fancy drawing marker. But honestly, a ballpoint pen is great. If that's all you have, that will do wonderfully. Okay, so we're going to today start to kind of build on our drawing techniques. We've been talking a lot about, the slow methodical process of contour. And, definitely when we did our studies for drawing number 3, I feel like we started to break up that slow methodical approach. But we've been talking about how contour has been this like really slow, approach to drawing something where you're just basically trying to draw, the edges that you see in a really slow approach. And its purpose is basically by drawing slow, we're able to find accuracy because we can learn to start to judge distance based on the slow speed that we are taking to draw, to draw the form. It's very difficult to find symmetry in contour because it's really hard to draw equal distances on each side of a central axis based on just feeling. Can it be done? Yeah, it totally can. Do you get better at it? Yeah, you do. But it, like you have discovered yourselves, it is a very difficult sort of thing to do. And the hardest thing to do for most of you has been to slow down. And of course, part of that is because whenever I do demonstrations, it's like, okay, I better keep this at a certain speed so that you can pay attention. Because if I was to draw, a glass in 45 minutes and all I got was the rim, you would be quite lost, and also you probably wouldn't stay with me for 45 minutes while I drew and didn't speak. So, this, even like this approach is too fast for contour. This approach is moving towards a quick contour analysis. What we looked at with your studies for your contour drawing 3 was this idea of using continuous line contour to feel through a form a little bit more, borderline gesture drawing. Okay, so gesture drawing being a drawing process in which, the word that people usually use with it is like sketching, sketchy. But gesture drawing being a process that's about holistic drawing versus contour, which is about detail and edge drawing. So they are two different things. But this would be more of a continuous line contour drawing of the same glass. Now, a gesture drawing would probably be like this. Most gestures can't go longer than 5 minutes. Usually we call that a sustained gesture. A gesture drawing is meant to be pretty quick, pretty methodic in terms of like you're looking for whole shapes, whole forms. You're not really thinking about detail at all. Okay. So the trick with drawing is to learn how to like, imagine that this was the keyboard on the piano while you're drawing and you're like dragging your hand and it's, sort of at a high octave, like so that you're sort of like bringing all these things together to help you to create whole drawings. This goes back to the idea, I think I covered it, but 1 + 1 = 1, right? That like, in math, 1 + 1 = 2. But in alchemy, 1 + 1 = 1, because alchemy is basically like chemistry. And so if you have one material and you boil it and add another material, then they don't become two materials, they become one material, okay, if they are compatible. And so, this is kind of like our feeling in drawing, which is like 1 + 1 = 1, that like one process with another process makes like a new process. And so we're trying to learn, like the idea of starting here is because it's all about observation, which many of us don't do in life. Like it takes a long time for someone to be trained to actually observe. This is about sort of starting to combine observation with the understanding of wholeness of form. This is just about wholeness, where you're only observing the gigantic shapes. And so each one has a different purpose and a different procedure within the process of learning to draw. So what we're going to do is we're going to take what we've been practicing and we're going to start to try to pull some things together. So what you're going to be doing is 10 to 20 minute continuous line contour drawings of interior spaces. So we haven't done 2-point perspective yet, but most of the time when you look into a space, you're going to be looking into a 2-point perspective space. Okay. Now I'm talking here about spaces. Make sure you understand, like this is like rooms. So sometimes for this assignment, I get like a drawing and it'd be like, here is this drawing that I get. I'll get like a curtain. And recognize that a curtain is not a room. It's not an interior space. Okay. So it might be a nice drawing of a curtain, but it's not going to get the points because it's not an interior space. Okay. And part of, it's a little difficult to sort of explain to students who aren't art students. But every department has goals, right? And like our department's goal is that you will learn enough that you will go on to take higher level art classes. Well, part of art is following instructions. Now that might go against what you believe art is. That art is about open expression. If that is how you feel, I'm afraid you're about 70 years too late. During the 1950s, art was definitely about open expression. But it's 2022, and that period of art is gone. Art has parameters, it has rules, it has histories, it has purposes, it has so much about it. And one of the things, that students don't always quite understand is like, well, why can't I just do what I want to do? Why can't I interpret your instructions the way I want to interpret your instructions? Because my goal isn't to teach you how to interpret your instruction, my instructions. My goal is to teach you how to do this practice of making art successfully at the college level. No, I mean, like, Simon, just watch the video. So if I tell you to draw interior spaces and you just draw pieces of furniture, then you're not talking about spaces, you're just talking about furniture. And those are two different things. If I tell you to draw interior spaces and you go outside and you draw, well, that's not an interior space, that's an exterior space. So I want you to focus on interior spaces. It's quite specific, I believe, in the assignment. And so this is going to mean like rooms. And what I tell you to do is go places you enjoy. Like, yeah, there's COVID right now, so don't put yourself at risk. But like, perhaps there is a room in your house you really like, or there is, a secluded isolation sort of like room in a library you get to check out, and you're the only person in there. There is obviously some restrictions because of COVID. So maybe you don't enjoy sitting in your dining room, but I definitely don't want you to go into like a restaurant where there's like 50 people, and place yourself at risk. I'm not interested in that. And the school wouldn't be happy with me if I told you to do that. But we are talking about interior spaces. So whatever those spaces could be. But I'm not interested in exterior spaces, and I'm not interested in like just like a single piece of furniture. Okay. And what you're going to do is we're looking at 1-point perspective. So that means you're going to be looking directly like at a wall, at a hallway. You're not going to be looking at a corner. Make sure you understand. We've not done 2-point drawing yet, so you won't be looking at a room like this. Right, that's going to be a 2-point room. You're going to be looking at a room that looks like this. Like maybe there's a window here. And that comes down. And yes, there's a couch. It's okay to draw furniture as part of a room. I just don't want drawings of furniture by themselves. It needs to all be parts of the rooms. So because we're looking straight forward at, like this visible edge, this visible edge, this visible wall, that would be a 1-point perspective. If I'm seeing a corner, that means I'm seeing a 2-point perspective. So make sure you sort of see the difference between them. Every room has 4 walls usually. My studio apartment doesn't. It has like 3 walls and then a kitchen with 3 walls. But 3 walls at least, perhaps 2 walls, whatever. But we're thinking about like interior spaces, and what you're going to do is you're going to pick your standing point, and you can be seated. It can be a seated point too. And I want you to use kind of like your own visual perception of space. So say again, I'm looking at this window. Try to apply what we've been learning about perspective from the reading and from today's lesson. And I want you to use continuous line contour to create a borderline gesture drawing of a room. For most of you, it will end up being a gesture drawing. That's fine. I'm just saying borderline because it's making me feel good because we haven't really gotten to gesture yet. I want you to think about edges and dimensionality. And I want you to draw everything that you can see. Now, if there's a chair in a room and it's kind of like turned at an angle, then you're probably going to enter into 2-point perspective. And there you're gonna have to rely on your observation, and that's okay. It's just gonna be easier if you start off with a room that's a 1-point perspective room. I do not expect these to be perfect. I expect them to meet my time limits. Now, some of you noticed on your contour drawings too that I gave you an incomplete grade if your line quality showed me that what you did was not a 4-hour drawing or even a 2-hour drawing. How do I know? Because I've been teaching drawing for 20 years. Okay, that's how I know. So your line quality should inform me that this is a 10 to 20 minute drawing. And honestly, I can tell. It is both my, gift and my the opposite of a gift. Can't think. So you're gonna draw for like some of your drawings can be 10 minutes, some of your drawings should be 20 minutes. But about halfway through your drawing, you're gonna switch to a pen. And you're gonna use the pen to clean up your drawing. I suggest you continue to do continuous line, but it doesn't have to be quite as seeking because you already did a lot of the seeking line with the pencil. Now, this is the type of project that students really get upset about because it's very, like my instruction is kind of open. But it's purposeful. Like, I want you to explore. And you can explore and still meet my time limits, Okay, so you're gonna use a pencil for half the time and then a ballpoint pen or something for the second half of the time. The assignment is in the course. It's right here. So here's all the information that you need. You're doing 10 drawings of perspective spaces analyzed through contour drawing and pen and pencil. Each drawing should be 10 to 20 minutes. Okay, and it's a very simple, straightforward assignment. Place all of your drawings into a Word document to upload for the assignment. Okay, now the other things that you have that are due right now, if you haven't been keeping up, is your perspective reading was due today, and then you have your 1-point quiz. Okay, and then I'm going to, this needs to be removed. I'm also going to add these very, I don't think they're particularly difficult, but very, what's what I'm looking for? They can be misjudged as being very simplistic perspective packet handouts. And I'm going to upload those to also be done over the weekend. And then we'll be able to see where everybody is in terms of their current understanding of perspective as we build more into it. Okay. Chelsea, Simon, questions?
No. Thank you, though. It was a great lesson.